Good.
Hello. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Joan Lok, and thank you for coming in today's Zoom chat. And in today's Zoom chat, I'm going to cover two different topics. The first one will be on rice paper, how to identify them. And the second one will be on leisure seal and its placement. And I will try to keep this 40 minutes because similar to last Zoom chat, I do have a workshop coming up at 1 p.m. this afternoon. As a matter of fact, you'll probably see that already. Put up the samples on the background. We will be painting roses, specifically in the Lingnan style that use opaque white. So if you have not signed up for the class and you are still interested, like that's still time, to join me, and the class start at 1 and in 2 hours time, and it'll be 2.5 hours long. And so just go to my website and sign up. All right. First of all, these questions that I cover in the Zoom chat are basically questions from students that they ask, and with it is not a with it can benefit other authors of the sumi-e art form, I will actually table it and answer it here. And many of you have noticed that I have moved. And when you move, a lot of times what you do is you put all your things in a box, and then of course in the new location, you open your box and then you reorganize your stuff. And I have to say that I have so much art supplies that when I arrive in my new location, half the boxes that arrive at the house is labeled art supplies. So you can imagine how much work it needs to be done, to do all this. And then when I open all my boxes, a good number of the supplies are papers. And, like sometimes, even you think, what the papers are, like after it has been moved, like the papers on the top of that drawer is always the size one. They're no longer on top of a particular drawer because they are all inside boxes. So what I'm going to do today is I'll tell you my way of identifying the paper, and then also show you ways that maybe, after, watching today's Zoom chat, then, you may want to create something similar of your own to going forward will be easily able to identify papers. First of all, I think everybody have watched, like cooking show or cooking competitions, and occasionally they would blindfold the contestants and give them something to eat and say whether they know it's broccoli or, or celery or things like that. And I have to say that you have to be a pretty good chef and know the taste of what celery is before you can tell that what they put in your mouth is celery. So in a way, that's the same thing with rice paper. You have to use the paper and know its quality and its specific response to water and ink and color in order to know what they are. So when I'm, thinking about how to more systematically tell you, how to identify paper, first of all, if you, grab a piece of paper, something, like a piece of paper, and then you don't know, what it is. In the olden times, which is, as now as well, first of all, you want to find out whether it's size or unsized, right? Because the reaction is completely different. So the first thing you want to know is whether it's size or unsized. And the easiest way to do it is water, okay? All you need to do is to get a brush, get to your water, drop a drop of water onto the surface of the paper, and see if it absorb immediately onto the surface, or it actually stay and then slowly get absorbed into it. And the reason, of course, is the one that has a slow absorption is the one that is sized, because sizing reduces the absorption of moisture onto the paper. So the first thing you do is to use a drop of water to find out whether it's size or unsized. And I can tell you a not very hygienic way of how people in the olden times find out whether paper are sized. You know what they do? They actually lick the paper. They use their tongue because that's the source of liquid, like when you're in an art store. That's the source of liquid that you can have easily, like accessible to you, right? They actually use their tongue and lick the paper. And I have to say that's not only non-hygienic, is gross. So like, although it's the way that like maybe 100 years ago, what people would do to find out whether paper is size or unsized, don't do that. Okay? I don't think people want to see you licking anything in the art supply store. Okay? But then basically is, get a brush, get a drop of water. And of course, I'm talking about you're not in an art store, you're actually in your studio, but want to determine what is in front of you. So you own the paper, right? So draw a drop of water to find out the absorbency, all right? And then rice paper are not the same. So the amount of water and the speed it is absorbed into the water also give you hints of what kind of paper it is. And so the first one is the absorbency, whether size or unsize. And the second one is actually the thickness of the paper. So what you want to do is you want to touch it and you want to like do something like this to it, like to get a feel of how thick or thin it is, all right? And I'm sure that many of you has more than one kind of paper. And we keep talking about, for example, the unsized paper. We talk about Shuen and double Shuen, single Shuen and double Shuen. And as I say, just like the taste of celery, if you have not tasted celery before, it's very hard to describe what's the difference between celery and broccoli. So what you want to do is, when you have time, actually touch the single Shuen and touch a double Shuen and actually get a feel on your fingertips, the difference between size and unsized, the thickness, right? And of course, rice paper are manufactured majoritarily by home-based or family-owned manufacturer in villages. And because of that, unless it is from an extremely big paper manufacturer that has machines that do it, but most of them are actually still made by hand, and a lot of them in villages, factory in little villages. So in a way, various things also affected. For example, Shuen, I think most of you who are experienced sumi artists would know Shuen is not the material. Shuen is a name of a village, or actually a city. Shuen is the name of a city because it is so famous for the quality of paper that it produced. People actually call the paper from that city Shuen paper. And think about it like wine in France. Burgundy, Bordeaux, Margaux, they are not names of grapes. They are actually names of villages and vineyards and regions in the French area that produce that particular kind of soil and grape and temperature and rainfall and therefore, like Bordeaux tastes like this, Margaux tastes like this, and things like that. So Shuen is actually the name of the city that produced the paper. Now back to the double and single Shuen. So before you actually get lost of what the paper are, when you have time, actually use your fingers and then touch the single Shuen and double Shuen and get a feel of the thickness of the paper. And on the topic of double Shuen, I want to also mention that there's something called triple Shuen, all right? Meaning that there are 3 parts of single Shuen together, all right? It could be very thick, but then, like some artists may like it. So, if you encounter something called triple Shuen, they do exist, right? And the most interesting Shuen paper that I have kind of have the good fortune of obtaining a very small stack is many years ago when I traveled back to Hong Kong, and everybody knows that the Lingnan master Shao lived in Hong Kong, and he particularly liked a kind of Shuen paper that was customly made for him. The reason is because that Lingnan style is the spontaneous reaction of paint and ink and water onto the paper, and each stroke became a petal or a blade of leaf, because Shao, although he can do a lot of different things, but he's most famous for his flower and birds. So for his Shuen paper, it's actually double Shuen, 2 pieces of double Shuen, customized and stick together. It's very interesting. I mean, like when I heard of it, I'm like, ooh, that's interesting. And I was able to, through connections, actually obtain a small stack of that paper. And I think I still have maybe like 10 pieces left because I treasure so much. I, like only want to paint something when I'm really confident in doing that. But then the very interesting thing is because they are stick together, they're actually stuck together by the retailer. The retailer got the Shuen paper and then stuck it together for Master Shao. And after you paint it, you can actually, tear it back into 2 pieces. I just move as I say, so I've seen it, but I cannot tell you that I know exactly where it is in the house now. But then maybe in the next Zoom chat, if I remember, I will actually show you what it looks like. But it's actually 2 pieces of double Shuen stuck together for Master Shao. But meaning that, like you can have the paper that you want for the absorbency that you want. But okay, so in a way that's like quadruple Shuen. But double Shuen, single Shuen, so you know the thickness. Another way to determine the thickness is actually against the light, right? When you have the paper, hold it against the light, and you will see the way the fiber is. And by identifying the fiber, you may be able to tell the material that it's made from. But as I say, just like a chef, you have to know what you're looking at. And therefore, when you acquire a new paper, actually notice that, oh, this is my paper. This is how the fiber look like. Or this is PE, and PE is actually the bark of a tree. So this is how the bark paper look like, the PE paper look like. So when it comes to the paper, let me show you. Let me just maybe turn to this camera to see where can show better. Okay, so this is a piece of paper called Dragon Cloud, right? And I have a dark background, so you can see there are actually fiber. There are actually fiber. I mean, besides the irregular fiber on the paper, there are actually some long fiber on it that is randomly, in a way, kind of randomly shredded onto the paper itself to form really nice pattern, right? So what is the advantage of having that? And by the way, the front and back is different. You probably noticed that rice paper, because of the way it's made, the part that is touching the drying surface are the one that is rough. The part that is smooth are the one that is the surface that is left to dry without touching anything, right? So if you turn to the back, you see here, these fiber is actually bumpy if you touch it, right? And if you want to, you can actually use your finger or a needle and you can pull them out, right? So this is called Dragon Cloud, but Dragon Cloud is not the only one that has this kind of fiber. There are other papers that have this kind of fiber as well, and some of them actually have it in the title called long fiber. And so there are multiple ones that have long fiber like that. But I want to show you something that is fun. Let me see. Because I also want to use this paper for a little demo later, but for something else. But let me just use some ink. If I use some ink and paint on this, you see how interesting it is? The fiber, the absorbency is a little bit resistant to it. So therefore, it looks different. And the front also have very interesting mark. And I think some of you have a copy of my, art book. the Asian Spirit Modern Flair. I have a piece of artwork that I use the Dragon Cloud paper, and then see, the falcon is painted, just like sumi-e and watercolor. So the falcon is painted on the rice paper, and this is a Dragon Cloud rice paper. And what I did is the background is actually painted on the back of the paper with blue and yellow. And by doing that, you see, because the paper, the fiber does not really absorb all the moisture at the same rate. And especially if you do a light coat, some of the fiber will actually resist that. And you see all this very interesting texture that I created in this falcon painting. These are all the fiber that is in the paper that when I painted on the back, it even exaggerates more the absorbency of the watercolor. So that would be something cool that you can do. As a matter of fact, if you are into sumi-e and there's a very famous sumi-e, actually it's not really a sumi-e artist, but he is a very famous artist from Taiwan who live in America. His name is Liu Guochong. He is really famous for using this fiber to create pattern, because what he did is he discovered the interest of this pattern. So he actually went back to the manufacturer and requested to have hair-free application of this fiber. I mean hair-free application, really thick, big pieces of fiber to make the paper. And after his paper is made, of course, when it's dry, mine is still wet, but when it's dry, what he'll do is he'll pull out the fiber, and you see this? It leaves a marking. And this marking will become mountains, and he actually painted outer space, the astronaut, and things like that as well. So you see here, the front and the back also have a different effect, but then these are all not done by brushwork. These are done by application of sumi-e ink plus the removal of the fiber. So this is Dragon Cloud, but then there are some other ones. And as I say, if you want really exaggerated look, then you can have the manufacturer actually made very heavy application of fiber for the guochong. Yeah. So that's another way of looking at the paper, is to look at the fiber, right? So another way to identify the paper is actually in the labels. Okay, rice paper, unlike watercolor paper, because usually they're very thin, so it's kind of hard to stamp it. Because I think some of you are watercolors, you know that if you have a arches, right, and the full sheet of arches on one of the corner, one of the four corners, it will actually have a watermark that say arches, right? And then that is true for various brand of watercolor paper. I mean the premium brand and the professional brand watercolor paper. It's actually stamped, so you can they're not in all four corners, they're only in one. So if you cut the paper into half sheet and quarter sheet, then only the sheet that has that corner would tell you, the other would not. But you can go to one of the corners and it will tell you that whether it's an Arches or not, or whether it is some other brand. All right. So rice paper is too thin to have that watermark or that marking. However, if you have bought 100 pieces of rice paper, then usually what they come is usually what they did is they come folded like this, right? And then you open it, and then you can use each piece and things like that. But what they did is when they folded it together, what the manufacturer did is they would actually open the paper, kind of like, if this is the book, or this is a whole stack of paper, they will kind of open it, kind of like smooth it out and open it. And then they will stamp here, because then it will be enough width to stamp the paper. And then what is usually stamped is actually the name of the manufacturer, and also the kind of paper that it has. And usually the manufacturer date is not stamped on it, but will be on a separate sheet of paper. It's almost like QC control. Then they would stuck it onto that stack of paper. If you have bought a 100 as a rim, 100 pieces of paper from any of the retailer, they will usually just mail the whole stack to you, like roll it up like that, right? And then on here you will see it. You will see that. And then the most famous or recognizable, because they're in Chinese words, so if you don't read the language, the most recognizable is a red star within a circle. I'm sure that many of you have seen it. Red star within a circle, because it's a particular brand. Okay, so you can tell whether it is a red star single Shuen or red star double Shuen, because the name would actually say single Shuen, double Shuen, something like that, or it is sized paper or unsized paper. It will actually say on that, right? And then I remember, and on the more expensive paper, it may be stamped individually, because I just taught a Gongbi workshop yesterday, and I talk about, we actually use a different kind of paper for size paper for the landscape, but then for flower and birds, actually, I don't use that kind of rice paper. I use a size paper called cicada wing. And cicada wing is a premium quality size rice paper. And it's called cicada wing because it's very thin. It's almost like a cicada wing. And because of that, the paper is expensive. We usually don't buy a 100. We buy per piece, okay? And because we buy per piece, the name cicada wing paper would actually be stamped on each piece of paper on a very lower left or lower right corner, depending on how you read it. Of course, they're also in Chinese, they're not English, but the word would actually say whatever manufacturer cicada wing paper. That actually it was on each piece. At least the one that I use, on each piece of the paper would have that. And of course, since I know the mark is there, so when I paint, I will make sure that I make allowance for that, because I don't want to paint over that corner. And then when I mark it, that marking will show, because that marking will be distracting from my artwork. So I'm very aware of that. And that is maybe around 1 centimeter wide, and probably around maybe 5 to 6, 7 centimeter long. So it's a very narrow, maybe like this much, but still, for an artwork, it does occupy some space. So I think it's on the lower right corner. But if you have bought, that kind of paper, it's on each piece. So you can look at the paper by the marking. So if you have that. Oh, by the way, why we do not buy size rice paper in 100? The reason is size rice paper has chemical on it, and because of the chemical, because of the sizing, the alum or some other chemical on it to decrease the absorbency, if you put the paper away and not paint on it for like years and then come back and use it, they actually become very brittle. They have easily disintegrate and become dust because of the chemical reaction, the deterioration of the paper. So I would probably suggest, unless you are a, kind of like I am a Gongbi painter, I paint in this style, and I paint a lot of them. Otherwise, I don't recommend you go and buy 100 pieces of size paper, unless you can really use them up. because they do become brittle, they do become fragile a lot earlier than regular rice paper. So, especially if you have, I don't think it will like become bad in 1 or 2 years. But then if you, time, especially when you get older, time is, is relative, right? When I was 12 years old, my 13th birthday appears to be a really, really long time away, right? But then when I, past my 35th birthday, and before I know it, my 40th birthday came. So everything is relative. So if you buy size rice paper, don't buy 100. Buy the amount that you need. Maybe, if you don't want to keep ordering it, maybe buy 10, 15, 20 pieces. Or because they come in full sheet, so 20 pieces is a lot, especially if you really want to practice the gongbi style. You usually take a long time to finish one piece of work. So I don't recommend you buying like 100 because they do become brittle. You want newer paper, right? So another way to identify the paper is not the type, but whether it's machine made or handmade, is to look at the edges, all right? I'm sure that, many of you started when you are a beginner painter, you use something called palette moon or paper that came in like a little pad, right? Those are the economic paper for students, and those are machine made. And machine made paper, the most recognizable way to see it is the edge, right? The edge are straight because it's cut straight. But then for handmade paper, just like the dragon cloud that I just showed you earlier, this is the natural edge of the paper. And this natural edge is when they make the paper, this is the edge of where it came to the end of the support, right? So you can tell by the natural edge of the paper. However, I also want to show you, you can fake it. Because if you want to create a natural edge, this is the easiest way to do it. You can just put some water, okay, and wait a little bit. Don't do it immediately, wait a little bit, and then you just tear. Then you have a flared edge. However, when you look at this edge versus this edge, you see the natural curling of the fiber. But this one is basically the natural breaking of the fiber. But then there's a difference, right? So learn to see the difference, especially when you have, for example, like this is, although this is dragon cloud, but this one is also dragon cloud. Let's see. Do I have another? But not right in front of me, but maybe this one, yeah. This one is actually also a natural edge. Yeah. But then you can tell the natural edge is different than this kind of tear. So you can tell by the edge of the paper, right? So so these are some of the way that you can tell the difference between the paper and things like that. So what I'm going to show you, let me just see if I can find one. What I'm going to show you is how to make something that that you can kind of help you differentiate the paper later. And this is something that I made, especially before the pandemic, when we are, going to workshop and demo in person. So especially when I go to demo in a school or a public event that the audience are not sumi artists, a lot of times they don't understand the difference in rice paper. So what I did is I have a little booklet of rice paper that have one of each of different kind of rice paper that I have. And what I do is I will just pass it along the audience so they can flip it over and touch it and then experience, oh, this is the size rice paper. This is, oh, see how thin it is. Or this one come with a touch of gray already on the paper. And, this one is dragon cloud and, things like that. So I made different little booklets, okay? So in a way, they kind of look like what you will see in the olden time when you go to a paint shop and buy paint. So this is how you do it, right? So what you do is you gather your pieces of paper. Okay, actually you get a harder board, this is just a cardboard that I have handy. And then you just gather various kinds of paper and then you stack them up together. Place them one after the other, okay? Put whatever you want to show your audience. This one. And then this one. And I also have a size paper that has micro on it, so I kind of like that, so I put that there as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a pair of scissors. Then I have a stack of paper. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to staple them. And then in order for them to, not be damaged when I travel, usually I just find a cardboard, and this is a cardboard that I have handy, and I'll just, like make and that would be a little sample that I can carry along. And if you want, you can actually use a pen and then write down, this is double Shuen, this is single Shuen, and things like that, and put it in your studio. So when you discover a piece of paper and forgot what it is, you can touch it and then compare it with what you have, then you will know what the paper is, okay? Any questions on this? Because I think I am really tight on time, but I want to, because I did promise to talk a little bit about the seal. So any questions before I move on and change my subject?
I have a real quick one, Joan. The paper that you artificially tore, that looked like a piece of practice paper with the stripes on it. Is that what that was? Practice paper? The rice paper?
Which one? The
one that you wet the line on and you tore. It looked
like that is actually a practice paper.
Okay, my question is, what if you do a really nice project that you like on the practice paper? Is it like taboo to put that in displays or?
No, practice paper is fine. I mean, what we don't want is we don't want like newsprint or that kind of paper because they are not archival. But then practice paper are just not a high quality. I mean, like it's machine made, and but then practice paper is okay. I mean, a lot of times, not that you intend to, but then because I do a lot of, as I say, pre-pandemic, I do a lot of workshops, and then sometimes when you're in a workshop and then you did a demo, and I just grab a piece of paper and do a demo, and then after the workshop, I'm like, this is really good piece of work, right? And you finish it, and then you enter into a show. I mean, like, there's nothing wrong with it. What you cannot do is you cannot use a newsprint because it's not archival. It's actually acidic. It become yellow. Don't even take half a year. I mean, like in 1 to 2 months, in weeks, it actually become yellow because they are newsprint. They are newspaper. They are very acidic, right? So, but then of course, depending on your level of the skill, confidence, and also your resources, right? What I have to be honestly saying that, I have newsprint because, when especially for my pilot student, when I have pilot student, they don't have to bring anything. They just come to my house and I would just work with them, and they use all my supply because it's just easier than You know, like when you bring your supply, your mom was like, you bring half a truckload, right? So I don't want my students to do that. So with you have private lesson with me, you basically just come and then you use all my supplies.
Okay.
And because of that, you know, we just use, you know, whatever is handy. So I do have newsprint, especially for beginners that want to practice the bamboo, the orchid and things like that. However, what you don't want to do is you practice the flower and it was so good, but right next to it, you have something else because you were practicing bamboo and you cannot make it into a painting. Then you will be kicking yourself. So because of that, I have to say that my newsprints is only for my, you know, private lesson practice.
Sure.
But then when I am playing with my, I mean, sometimes I'm not painting something, I'm just playing or just practicing, I still use really good paper. As a matter of fact, actually, I bought this just to show. I'm doing roses in an hour. So I was playing with my roses, and it's a nice piece of Shuen paper, but then it begins as playing, meaning that I have no intention to make it into a painting because I was just playing with my strokes. And but then they are actually good paper. And if you see my video and also been to my workshop, you know that a lot of times my plotting paper are all my rice paper. But that's a good thing. So the absorbency is exactly what it would be in the real paper. So you know, with especially with is economically viable, I would probably say that, you know, just use practice paper, or but practice paper can be framed. I mean, there's nothing bad about it. I mean, of course, you know, like I think they are archival. I don't think they are you know, bad in any way. Yeah. Okay. So any more questions? Okay, with not, I'll talk about
Joan?
yes.
Yeah. Oh, I had a question. So for thickness, you have single or double. And then
Yes.
for absorbency, you have unsized, half-sized, or semi-sized, or sized.
Mhm.
So can single be unhalf or size? Can double be unhalf or size? In other words, is thickness and absorbency mixed?
Well, the cicada wing is very thin, meaning that it's actually single. So single paper can be sized because
Okay.
I mean, I actually tried to look for one before the class, but I was unable to find it. But even on the screen, it doesn't show that well. But if you have seen cicada wing, it's so thin that it's almost transparent. As a matter of fact, that's why it's called cicada wing. If you want to paint a dragonfly for Gongbi style, I would paint it. I mean, I would draw the dragonfly in the front, but the coloring of the wing is actually on the back because it's so thin, it can see through the coloring of the wing. Yeah. So single Shuen can be sized. So sizing is to affect the absorbency. Thickness is also affect the absorbency as well, because if you have, I mean, I'm sure that you have multiple kind of paper. Single Shuen are not the same because it depends on the manufacturer, and it also depends on the fiber that they use. Most common one is mulberry, but then besides mulberry, it's just like you know, like some chef secret formula. So the manufacturer is not just, okay, this is the fiber, this is the water, I boil them, I, you know, like made them all up, and now I can pour them onto the mold and make a piece of paper. It's not that simple. There are different little things that they're not going to tell you what they did, but then it's the secret formula that have the right balance that make that piece of paper to have that absorbency and things like that. So it's the absorbency, it's the kind of fiber, and semi-size. I'm glad you brought that up. Semi-size. I like to use a kind of paper called Ma. As I say, if you have my book, you will see that a lot of times I have either double Shuen or Ma in my Chinese brush painting flower book. And because Ma is semi-sized. Ma is semi-sized not by chemical. Ma is semi-sized by nature because the fiber has a certain resistance or like it's not as readily absorb the moisture as some other fiber. So we call them semi-sized for ease of understanding. But basically, it's the nature of the fiber. The fiber itself is not as absorbent. It's just like cotton. Like we have, when you're wearing a cotton shirt or wear a polyester shirt, not all cotton shirt, when you go to the laundry and wash it, not all cotton shirt can be wet, like equally well, right? And they're all cotton. I mean, so what's the difference, right? It's still 100% cotton. But then the thing is the kind of cotton that they use, the way they weave the cotton together to make that particular outfit will affect the way is when it's wet, how it would feel. So the same thing with paper. Even the material they disclose fully what kind of fiber it is, it will still show. So semi-sized Ma is semi-sized because of the nature of the fiber. But size usually is by chemical. And when I say chemical, it could be natural chemical. For example, we use alum to size our paper. Alum is actually, like it can be manufactured chemically, but it actually also can be extracted from plants, right? So there are different things that we can use. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
I will extend this for around 15 minutes because I'm running out of time, but I did promise to talk about the seal. I have a question on where to put the leisure seal. Initially, I want to talk about seal placement, but then since I cannot do that, maybe I'll do it in the next one to talk about the entire seal placement. But then if you have my Chinese brush painting book Flowers, go to page 30 and 31. I actually fold in a portion on seal. I actually fold in a portion talking about the seal. This is the book, Chinese Brush Painting Flowers, because I think it's important. And I talk about different kind of seals. So, like I can interpret a lot more, but basically there are 4 kinds of seals. There are the name seals, the studio seals. Okay, the name seals are for your name. Studio seals are, of course, for the name of your studio. And then there are leisure seal, which could be a poem, a lot of, like life phenomenon or, like things like that. And then there's something also called a collection seal, which is, like it's not related to the artist. It's actually because the name seal, leisure seal, and studio seal belongs to the artist, the creator of the artwork. But collection seal is the one who owns the painting. Okay, so that's why it's kind of like, because some people like to put studio seal and collection seal together, but studio seal belong to the artist, collection seal belong to the collector. All right. So I also bought this book, but then maybe I'll talk about it later in the next class, next Zoom chat, because historically there are lots of masterpieces that are from the palace, and I'll show you, like one of the best or worst thing about being collected by the palace, because you see how many seals this piece of artwork has? This is collected by the palace. You see all this. And so, that's good or bad thing about this. Like, I mean, the good thing is at least, they didn't stamp it right on top of the painting, but then in a way they did, so we can talk a little bit about that next time. But let's talk about the leisure seal. Okay, leisure seal, like when I have a chance to talk about all the seal, each kind of seal has an expected format, meaning that there are ways that they should look like. Some of them should or expected to be a square. Some of them expected to be a long rectangle. well, seldom do you see a flat rectangle, right? And some of them, you may not see circle. However, from a square, you round the corner, you can see something that similar to a circle, right? And for leisure seal can be random shape, right? And there are also another kind of seal that can be random shape, but I'll talk about it in the next Zoom chat. So where to place the leisure seal? You can place, first of all, leisure seal is to talk about like a life theory, or what's the content of the leisure seal? Leisure seal could be a piece of poem. It could be different things, but it also could have a purpose of anchoring the artwork. So let's see if I can show you. This is a leisure seal of mine, and seal has two formats, right? The red words or the white words, right? Basically, when they carve it, because the seal pad is red, so whether they carve the word out or they carve the word as a concave or convex to make sure that whether it is showing red or white, okay? This one is white words, and this one say like living in the clouds or something like that. And this is a leisure seal of mine that my landscape teacher recommended that I carve. So I have it carved. And the message, actually, I think I have this on page 30. Yeah, this one is actually this one. Oops. This one is actually this one. So it says, living along the mist and clouds. And the meaning is longing for a hermit lifestyle, right? And this is a seal that I would use for many of my landscape as an anchor. And you see how heavy the seal is? Because it's white word and it's square and it's kind of like, because when you stamp it, it's heavier, right? So when you see my landscape portion of my book, you will see it, example here. In this particular painting, this is the seal that I have put it on the lower right corner of this work to anchor it. So leisure seal can have a purpose of anchoring, right? And then when you look at this placement of leisure seal, number one is to anchor the painting. So to balance it, to put it on the corner. And because it's heavy, it anchor it, right? But another thing is, and first thing, because it's anchoring, you don't put it on the top, right? You don't put it on the top because then it's too heavy on the top. Okay, and then I have the left and the right. So why did I put it on the left and not the right? Because when you put a seal, regardless of how heavy or light it is, you don't want it to block the chi of the painting. And then when you see this particular composition, I have waterfall coming down, and then I have clouds. And if I put the anchor here, I think I will be blocking the movement of the cloud and mist. So I put it on this side, right? So that's one way of doing your leisure seal. But then of course there are multiple things. And by the way, in the book on page 32 and 33, I actually talk a little bit about where to put signature and seal, the do and don't. And in this particular portion, I did talk about not blocking the chi of the painting. And like, see this one? This one also have an anchoring effect, right? Okay. So let me see what time, all right? So this is kind of like a quick discussion on the leisure seal and its placement, anchoring, not blocking the chi, and you do not need to put a leisure seal on all your artwork because it's kind of like making a personal statement. You do not need to put a personal statement on all the things that you touch, right? Sometimes signing it is good enough. But then, like it depends on your personality. You may want to like make a statement. And then we can also talk about the content of the leisure seal and things like that. But then, before I close, do I have any questions on the leisure seal and the placement? Good. Okay. A lot of times, if you look into leisure seal of the past of what some famous painting have and try to study it, some of them are actually quite humorous. Some of them, because of the person's life experience, sometimes they put a leisure seal in a way to express either that discontentment of their current situation or their contentment of their current situations. Or it's just a statement of something that they observe or things like that. As I say, a lot of time it's a piece of poem and things like that. And when it comes to leisure seal, I just want to bring out in the, I think it's Ming Dynasty, there are 4 very famous scholars that are good with poetry, calligraphy, and painting. So they are called like the 4 kind of like the 4 top scholars of the Ming Dynasty. Okay, and one of them is called Tang Bohu. And if you look at the life experience of this particular gentleman, in the olden times, everybody wanted to get into the government exam, and that's how they become officers and serve the government. And in his lifetime, he actually studied to try to take the exam and become a servant for the a part of the government. But then because of various misfortunes, he was kind of well, not really expelled, but kind of like there are some happenings at the examinations that he was accused, or one of his friends was cheating, and then because he was related to this particular person, so he was wrongly accused. Although his name was clear, he kind of felt very disenfranchised, like very, very insulted or what have you. So one way or the other, he no longer wanted to take the exam to become part of the government. Okay. And then because he's really famous for his art and culture and poem and painting, in his artwork, he had a stamp that said that he is the top scholar, but in the world of entertainment and enjoyment. It is kind of like, he was unable to get the top scholar recognition in the government positions. So he basically kind of like say that I'm the top scholar in the world of leisure, wine, and women, and things like that. And so you can think of how people want to make a statement, but in a statement, not only does he express like how he feel about himself, but it also express some kind of discontentment about his current situation, or even mark the examination system and how he was cheated, or something like that. So it could be a very interesting thing. So be very mindful of what you put on your art, because thousands of years later, people will still look at the seal and think, why did Joan put that in her art? I mean, what does that statement mean? Is it the literal surface meaning, or is it something that she is trying to make a statement about something? So that's the little thing about leisure seal. What I would do is do you guys want a more elaborate segment on seals? I can do that, because I actually have prepared a more detailed discussion, but then considering the time, I also don't want you to not be able to take a break, because I know some of you are actually coming to the Rose workshop. So any last questions? Okay, more on seal. Okay, yeah, I'll do that. Yeah. And please email me on how to celebrate the 2nd anniversary. And also, before I close, I also want to use it as a reminder to everyone that the workshops, the video workshops, has an expiration date of 2 years. So if you sign up 2 years ago, the expiration date is coming up. So double check the time you sign up, because the system will kick you out at the 2nd anniversary. So since my 2nd anniversary is coming up, I know that especially the early adopter that sign up in the early months of the existence of the online workshops, you may have a few more months to work on the videos and things like that. Or even you have finished it, you want to rewatch it again, please do so. And let me know if you encounter any issues and things like that. Because I may not be able to send individual reminders to everyone every time something expires. So this will serve as your notice. Right? So thank you everybody for joining me. And this will be posted in YouTube for people to watch again, especially on how to make that very interesting and useful little booklet. So I think if you have one of these booklet in your possessions in your studio, you will find it a lot easier to identify your paper later. All right, thank you everybody. Bye-bye.